Let's head straight now to Hurricane Sandy, heading into the Caribbean right now, and it could be targeting the East Coast next. Sam has been tracking the latest on this killer storm's path. Sam, a lot of people worried about this one.
Yeah, and with good reason. I mean, when you look at what we're about to show you, you'll see why we're concerned about this storm anyway. Let's show you the deepening center of this storm as it kind of exploded in strength overnight. Look at the little dark center there as it hops off Jamaica, then moves across that eastern end of Cuba. That's the center of this storm. Now, the waters in here are in the 80s, so it's going to slow down a little bit, but stay the strength that it is, maybe weaken a little bit over the next few hours as we watch it head into the Bahamas. But when we look at what's ahead for this storm and the combination of storms heading towards it, it reminds us a lot of another storm in recent history. Category 2 Hurricane Sandy will roar through the Caribbean after pounding Jamaica and Cuba with winds up to 114 miles per hour. This storm has already taken 2 lives. And forecasters fear it will soon be similar to another powerful storm that occurred in 1991.
We're looking at 40 to 50-foot waves, gale force winds.
It would be a disaster of epic proportions. It would be the perfect storm.
But the perfect storm stayed off the coast of New England when Hurricane Grace joined with a powerful nor'easter, bringing 50-foot waves and gale force winds.
Rockaway!
This storm could be worse, and forecasters say it could blast much of the East Coast, even coming on shore, starting this weekend. As Hurricane Sandy moves up the coast, it will meet up with an Arctic front moving across the U.S. and get extra support from the jet stream with a blast of Arctic air from the north. 3 elements colliding over the country's most populated corridor. And this is exactly what steers that storm system. Now, right now, the idea is that Sandy will continue to weaken as it moves up the Atlantic seaboard. But this front has a tendency to draw systems toward it. Any cold front kind of does. So it looks like this system will get so far and then try to make a little hook in. And that hook will be anywhere from the Delmarva Peninsula in toward the New York Long Island area right there, that we believe this storm system will be a hybrid storm by the time it moves there. And the forecast models are kind of agreeing with that. You remember a couple of days ago, they were laying it all out toward the Atlantic. 1 or 2 still do, but most of them and the trusted models will curve this thing in by the time we get into Monday and Tuesday of next week, making it a big rainmaker, some flooding, some gusting winds, a lot of trees down, a lot of power outages. We'll follow it moment by moment.
And Peter, the bulk of the storm not there yet, but you certainly are feeling some tropical winds.
We are. The wind is hard, the air is very cold, and just look behind me, the waves, now that the sun's come up, we get a sense of how tall the waves are. We've been seeing them when they were closer to shore with our camera lights, but now you can see, and they're not just coming straight in, they're all crashing into each other. It's really loud, so you're not just seeing it, you're hearing it. Here in Delaware also, we're getting reports now that the National Guard, along with some fire companies and police departments, are having to rescue some folks who did not evacuate last night by 8 o'clock like they were supposed to, and they're dealing with the very harsh effects of some flooding right now. We don't have any reports about how those rescues are going, but the governor of Delaware has put out the word that the National Guard is assisting with the local authorities. And also, I mentioned earlier this morning when it was still dark, this is the Boardwalk. The dune here, last line of defense, this is the Boardwalk, and it lines up to a bunch of places to eat and to stay and to shop. And the ocean, in the last hour or so, you can see it coming right here. The ocean is coming up onto, this is actually as bad as we've seen it yet. It's up all the way, and for the first time, right now, the Atlantic Ocean is actually hitting our hotel. There are some sandbags. There's a lot of stuff. Excuse me, the wind, you can see that they've got a hole here that's taking a lot of the water, but this is not good. This is not good in Rehoboth. This boardwalk, pretty long, goes down for basically as far as the eye can see. Visibility not so good right now, but you can see the ocean is washed away. There's a lot of shells and rocks. And as far down as I can see right now, most of it has gone down into the boards, the water, but it's completely dirty now, and anybody that does not have a sandbag or a board on the wall right now is going to have some water in their shop. Back to you in New York. All right,
Dramatic pictures out of Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, and it's not even high tide there yet, so look out, Peter. Wow.
Hurricane Sandy already deadly. 21 killed in the Caribbean so far.
And Sandy is now beginning its move up the East Coast, set to be a historic storm, and everyone from the Carolinas all the way up to Maine will feel its impact. It's expected to mix with 2 other huge systems over one of the most densely populated areas of the country. Experts are predicting at least $1 billion in damage.
All of the biggest cities on the East Coast. So let's get right to Sam, leading the coverage from our extreme weather team. Sam?
Good morning, George. And we want to give people a couple of days to get ready for this storm on the eastern seaboard, and that's why we're talking about it so much right now. But take a look at the canopy of clouds here, about 2,000 miles across. That's unbelievable when you look at the size of that storm. But zoom into where actually the storm is, and that's what we're talking about. That's Sandy right now. And the idea is with Sandy, the Hurricane Center has it crawling up the seaboard for a while, then speeds up from Saturday on. And this is kind of new information. Makes a turn. Looks like by Monday that it's going out toward the Atlantic and then hooks in, making a turn somewhere between Washington, D.C. and New York City, most likely in that Delmarva Peninsula into South Jersey area. Now, that turns this storm for the first time. We get kind of a hybrid storm turning into the coastline. Hybrid storm because remember, we're talking about Sandy getting hit with an Arctic blast of air at the same time, extra infusion of energy, and then getting spun up even more, supercharged by that jet stream. Exactly where is the storm right now? It's off the coast, about 300 miles away from Miami. You can see the feeder bands of rain getting in there, and that's exactly where our Ginger Z is this morning. Ginger, what are you feeling?
That's right, we're in between bands of rain, but the most impressive picture is behind me. The surf is pounding the beach, and watch this, the ocean has been coming up, this is not normal, all the way to the ropes where the grasses and the mangroves are. You can see the seaweed pushed up here. So storm surge is going to be a little bit of an issue, but again, South Florida gets more of a side swipe from Sandy. We get those pictures of 10 to even 15-foot waves at the shoreline, 30 feet out at sea. Rip currents would be most deadly, so do not go in the water if you are along the coast of Florida. The next step, though, as this goes away from Florida, is up the East Coast, as you said, Sam, and that's where we find our Lindsay Davis on the Jersey Shore.
Good morning, Ginger. This coastal area is a big concern. Sandy is not only expected to hit here, but to hit here hard. If we take a look at the video from where Irene hit this area last year, you can see that the sand mounds and the sea walls that are intended to be the front lines of defense for a storm, they were no match for the heavy rains and winds. Water just poured right in. As a result, there was massive flooding, mandatory evacuations, and people in this area once again bracing, preparing themselves for the worst.
Millions of Americans are bracing for impact as Hurricane Sandy rapidly approaches, threatening to morph into a rare superstorm as it barrels up the East Coast, poised to pummel over a third of the country. ABC's Ginger Z of our extreme weather team is on the ground in Florida with the latest.
As Hurricane Sandy rumbles through the Atlantic just a few hundred miles from the East Coast, its path of destruction has already killed at least 30 people across the Caribbean. From space, you can clearly see the size of this thing. It has tropical storm force winds extending almost 300 miles. Its shield of clouds stretching almost 2,000 miles.
The storm is far enough away that Florida will escape the brunt of the danger, but what we can escape is beach erosion, the surf pounding up and over. This should not be happening right here. The beach usually starts about 50 yards out.
Through the weekend, Sandy will snake around the coast, lashing the Carolinas with its westernmost tentacles before making its dirty turn directly toward the U.S., somewhere from the mid-Atlantic to New England.
When you factor in the unusual track that it's going to be taking, that is coming in from the east across the Jersey coast, it's a once-in-a-lifetime storm.
This so-called once-in-a-lifetime storm will only get worse as it moves closer to land. By Monday, it will collide with energy high in the atmosphere that will pull in some cold air from the northwest. Now, adding to that perfect storm scenario, there's what we call a blocking pattern that shoves energy from the north back at the storm and back toward the United States. Here's what all of that means to you. The storm will carry hurricane-force winds, up to a foot of rain, and a potential storm surge that could top out at 10 feet. Extreme conditions could begin as early as Sunday and last for days, drenching the most populated part of the country.
This storm that is going to be impacting the mid-Atlantic and parts of the Northeast Monday into Tuesday is going to be destructive, historic, and unfortunately life-threatening.
A state of emergency has already been declared in Maryland, D.C., Pennsylvania, New York, and Virginia. The biggest fear? The storm surge. In places like Atlantic City, it could get even worse because of a full moon and higher tides. People are battening down the hatches, preparing for the worst, up and down the eastern seaboard. In Norfolk, the Navy ordered 23 of its ships to leave port immediately. On the Jersey Shore, people are stocking up on essentials, including those generators. And in New York City, Mayor Bloomberg warns he may have to shut down the subway because it might flood.
There is a possibility that the MTA at some point would have to stop serving, remove their buses and trains.
The storm is also wreaking havoc on the presidential race. With the candidates already beginning to cancel events, it has all the makings of a nightmare before Halloween. For Nightline, I'm Ginger Z in Cocoa Beach, Florida.
Good morning, everybody. We want to get straight to the big story this morning. That Superstorm. ABC meteorologist Ginger Z is in Florida tracking what could be a once-in-a-century event. We'll get to her in just a moment.
That's right. Sandy has been downgraded to a tropical storm, but that's just temporary. This 900-mile-wide behemoth is forecast to become a hurricane again and join forces with a major winter storm. Multiple states are now issuing state of emergency alerts, and for many, today is the calm before the storm, a last chance to stock up, batten down, or just get out of town.
And that is what millions of people are doing, getting out. To give you a sense of what a mess this storm could make, it's expected to slam parts of the East Coast with a foot of rain and up to a foot of several feet of snow. It's going to last for days, bringing wind damage, power outages, and possibly massive flooding in some parts. ABC's Extreme team is covering all the angles this morning, and we're going to start, as we said, with Ginger in Cocoa Beach, Florida. Good morning, Ginger.
Good morning, Dan. It is still very windy here. We've had wind gusts of 50 miles per hour plus. You can see that choppy surf behind me at about 10 to 15 foot waves. There was a 31-foot wave way out at sea. Speaking of way out at sea, that's where Tropical Storm Sandy is. Yes, it was downgraded, but you can't let that fool you because it will re-intensify. And you can see the satellite picture here that gives you an idea of where the storm is, moving now north-northeast at 10 miles per hour away from Florida. Next stop is the Carolinas, and eventually that potential date with weather history.
Tumultuous waves hammering Florida beaches, serious erosion, and almost 4 inches of rain along parts of the Florida coast. That's what Sandy looks like down here. But up there, from space, you can clearly see the tropical storm. Its large, stretching wind field sending tropical storm force winds over 900 miles across. As Sandy aggravates the Atlantic, its path of destruction has already left at least 43 people dead across the Caribbean. Through the weekend, the storm will hug the Carolinas before turning its eye directly toward the coast, somewhere between the mid-Atlantic, Northeast, and New England by Monday night.
This storm that is going to be impacting the mid-Atlantic and parts of the Northeast is going to be destructive, historic, and unfortunately life-threatening.
Tropical Storm Sandy is a strong storm alone, but she's about to get infused with 2 atmospheric players. Sandy's tropical fuel will meet up with a trough from the west. That basically means a whole lot of energy and cold, dry air to mix in. Then you've got this high-pressure system parked over Greenland. That creates a blocking pattern, forcing energy back toward the storm and driving it into the East Coast. The biggest concern in the coming days is the potential for 4 to 10-foot coastal surge. That is expected in vulnerable areas like D.C., New Jersey, and New York, where evacuation orders may be enforced.
Even though the forecast path takes it centered right into southern New Jersey, parts of Delaware, the wind field will be huge on this, and that's why we have to check in with our Matt Gutman. He's in Nags Head, North Carolina. Matt, I'm going to give you those 50-mile-per-hour gusts today.
Thanks a lot, Ginger. And we really are starting to feel the impact of that Texas-sized storm starting to wallop here. I want to give you a sense for how frothy the water has become. It's been whipping up this foam everywhere now across the mid-Atlantic. They are in full swing with preparations. They are even starting to hand out sandbags in Washington, D.C.
With the lopsided behemoth lumbering towards them, all of the mid-Atlantic states are declaring states of emergency, including Virginia.
This is still an unpredictable weather event, but one that is possibly a very dangerous weather event for the Commonwealth of Virginia. We're used to having hurricanes. We're just not used to having them in late October.
In the nation's capital, linesmen were out reinforcing power lines, bracing for days-long blackouts. And nearly the entire Navy fleet in Norfolk is now under sail, 23 ships steaming out of port and harm's way. And officials are closely watching the 8 refineries in the storm's path. The hybrid storm already churning up potentially deadly surf here in North Carolina, raising red flag warnings.
It's crazy. Never seen a storm this late in the season.
Cutting short vacations and sending tourists streaming from the Outer Banks to higher ground and locals to stores to stock up on supplies.
And we are already starting to hear reports of people buying out generators, even shortages of water in some places. And because this is such a massive system moving in, the National Guard has said it is ready with 61,000 troops, guardsmen available if they are needed to be called up. Ginger.
Matt, let's get straight to that tropical storm watch and warning map. This is what people need to know this morning. This is what this storm is going to do to you. From Central Florida all the way up through the Carolinas, the watches and warnings for 40 to 50 mile per hour gusts are in place. That's today through tomorrow. Then the storm, the path, takes it right into the mid-Atlantic, southern New Jersey and Delaware being the heart of it. But remember, the wind field expands much beyond that. Could be felt all the way to Ohio, parts of western Pennsylvania. And the storm surge, it was mentioned once but needs to be mentioned again, 6 to 9 foot possible in those cities you see there, Atlantic City included, New York City included, Long Island as well. And then we've got that rainfall, because you've heard a lot about it. At best, locally, some places could top out at a foot or more after this is all said and done. You can see that heart of it, that 6 to 12 inches, and then it extends back into, again, parts of the eastern Great Lakes where you get anywhere from 3, 4, or even 5 inches of rain when this is all said and done. So flooding is going to be a problem. Coastal flooding, one of the major issues. Oh, and there's snow. I'll have more on that coming up in just a couple of minutes, but for now, we'll go back into the studio.
Fox News alert to begin happening now on Hurricane Sandy. That storm already slamming Cuba. Now we have brand new tracking, which shows where this massive system might be headed next. And it is not good news for those who live in the northeastern United States. Janice Dean has the latest from the Extreme Weather Center. What's going on, JD?
If this track comes true, it is the worst case scenario, John. Now, we still have days to go and a lot of information to kind of input into this tracking. But right now, this storm looks like it's going to be headed for millions of people. It's going to be a transitioning system, meaning that perfect storm type scenario. A tropical storm that transitions into an extratropical storm because a cold front, a very powerful Arctic cold front, is going to interact with the system and draw it in towards the northeast, a very rare meteorological situation. So this could be historic, folks. If you live across the East Coast, from the mid-Atlantic up to Maine and eastern Canada, you need to be paying very, very close attention to your local forecast. Still a Category 2. We just got the 11 o'clock advisory. It was a Category 3 major hurricane overnight, so it rapidly intensified within hours. Take a look at the latest track. As you can see, Category 2 moving through the Bahamas. It hugs the coast Friday into Saturday, but look at what happens as we head into early next week. The worst case scenario right now, moving right into millions upon millions of people. And this could cause extensive, catastrophic damage. I'm not just standing here making this stuff up. I want people to really pay attention to this because, again, this could be worst case scenario. At any rate, we're dealing with high seas, rip currents, beach erosion, coastal flooding, certainly storm surge as this storm moves on shore. The exact point or location where it's going to move on shore still not known yet, and the exact strength still not known yet. But we are going to see torrential rain and flooding inland. High winds, 60, 80 miles per hour, significant power outages that could last for weeks for millions of people, and down trees, John. We've still got foliage on the trees, and winds in excess of 60, 70, 80 miles per hour is going to cause extensive damage. I just want to show you one of our reliable forecast models. It is really becoming apparent that we are going to be dealing with a system that is going to come onshore, again, anywhere from the mid-Atlantic towards Maine need to be paying attention. But John, our mouths dropped at the latest tracking that shows this system going right into New York City. Obviously, we've got days ahead to really hone in and get this forecast right, but people need to be paying attention. We do think that this storm is going to come on shore, and it's going to cause a lot of damage.
And it's a big, broad storm, too. So even as it skirts up the coast, it's going to be dumping a lot of rain and wind on people.
Because it's transitioning into, you know the movie The Perfect Storm? It's a transitioning storm from a tropical to an extratropical. And what that means is the wind span is going to be greater. Tropical storm force winds extending 300, 400 miles from the center of the storm.
Wow.
It's going to be a battering storm affecting one of the largest city in the nation.
Wow. Janice Dean, thank you. And I know you'll have more on that throughout the hour. Thank you, Janice.
You bet.
We are back now with another kind of a look at Sandy. This is time-lapse footage from the 51st floor of the New York Times building. And basically, it takes you through the process of Sandy arriving. Look at you can see the clouds, the daylight. And now here's where the storm starts to get intense. And now watch what happens.
Wow. The New York Times put this on its website. Al, you've covered a lot of these storms. How do you compare?
I never have, in prepping for this, I had to raid my blizzard bag and my hurricane bag.
Wow.
Because I knew that it was normally we're standing around in shorts and Crocs and stuff while we're covering this. I was in 3 layers, but for the people who lived through this and are now living with it, the devastation is just unimaginable.
You were there by a hotel, right?
Yes.
But it got battered.
Yeah, the folks at the White Sands Hotel who were really sweet to us. We could not have done our coverage without them. But they had a beach side of their hotel, and then across the street their spa and stuff. And we were there, and I was there that night when the dune breached. Wow. And we had to gather up stuff and run like heck.
Do you think we will stop using the term 100-year storm or storm of the century, since it seems that we're seeing these?
I think this is in a sense the new normal.
Good evening. Tonight, an entire region of the country remains in the grip of a crisis. Large areas are paralyzed. People are suffering. The death toll is rising. And patience is already running out because some of the mechanisms of a civilized society aren't working. Put it this way, in New York City, the biggest city in the country, people can't find gasoline. And some people in the city today lined up to go through dumpsters of discarded food and groceries from stores because they have no power or water and need food. And some of the stores, what they still have, is still good, though it needed to be thrown out. And since you're going to hear the memory of Katrina invoked more and more in these coming days, like Katrina, 3 days out, here we are still learning of places that have received very little help, very little attention, like Staten Island, New York, within sight of the city skyline. NBC's Ann Curry starts off our team of correspondents. She's on Staten Island tonight. Ann, good evening.
Brian, good evening to you. That's right. Outrage boiled over here in New York City's Staten Island because more than 3 days after the hurricane here, people who are from this close-knit blue-collar community accuse government agencies of responding much slower here than to wealthier parts of the city.
Every single person on this block lost everything.
Staten Island has had enough.
We just want everyone to know that we are hurting down here and we need help immediately.
Residents here are asking, why hasn't more help arrived?
I think that we're not getting the attention because we are a working class neighborhood and kind of just like fend for yourselves kind of thing.
On the debris-strewn streets of this community, where the death toll has risen to at least 19, today fury and frustration played out on live television.
But you need to come here and help us. We need assistance, please.
Staten Island's borough president called it an absolute disgrace.
American Red Cross was nowhere to be found. So all the American Red Cross, all these people making these big salaries should be out there on the front line, and I am disappointed.
The Red Cross says it's sending 10 vehicles with food and water. Meantime, residents and officials are questioning the city's priorities.
The city of New York right now is talking about getting water out of the Battery Tunnel and preparing for a marathon. We're pulling bodies out of water. You see the disconnect here?
Today, New York City police and fire departments were still going house to house to account for everyone who didn't follow the mandatory evacuation order. Can you look me straight in the eye and say that the response was not disproportionate for places that were more wealthy in New York City?
Absolutely not. We brought everybody in. There's been FEMA task forces that have been assigned here now and, assisting us with the searches.
We are in the community talking to the residents who's been affected, and we're urging everybody to register with FEMA.
I never planned to leave here. I thought I was going to stay here the rest of my life.
Phyllis Puglia didn't lose any members of her family, but she did lose virtually everything else.
I want to go home, but there's no home. I can't go home, and that's killing me. It's breaking my heart. I want to go home to my house.
At 62 and a grandmother, she is trying to find traces of her life.
This is the only wedding photograph of my mom.
A moment of joy as the water on Staten Island recedes amid widespread desperation and grief. And adding to the sadness here, the bodies of two small children, ages 2 and 4, who were ripped from their mother's arms during the hurricane. Well, the bodies were found today. And also, we should probably tell you that the mayor, we asked him about the outrage here in Staten Island, and we are awaiting his response, Brian.
Ann Curry in Staten Island. Just for a little perspective, people not familiar with the city, you can just about see where Ann is from the top of 30 Rockefeller Plaza in Midtown Manhattan. These are all areas rather close together, and a lot of people are rethinking that decision to hold the New York City Marathon this coming weekend. And traffic at bridges and tunnels into Manhattan was backed up for miles during the morning rush hour. Those without cars had to line up for public transportation, for buses, for a very long time this morning just to get to work. During the evening rush hour tonight, our cameras captured a chaotic scene as a crowd of commuters tried to cram into one of the subway stations that is up and running for the first time since the storm. We have seen this before. The line between order and chaos in an urban area is often a moving target. Frustration is really rising among people who just want gasoline. NBC's Katie Tur is live at a gas station in Ridgefield, New Jersey, where demand has been heavy all day long. Katie, good evening.
Good evening, Brian. At its core, this is not a gas shortage. This is a power shortage, meaning stations either can't pump their gas or they can't get resupplied. Here at the Sunoco, the gas did run out around 4 o'clock this afternoon. That's why you're seeing these cones behind me. 10,000 gallons gone here before sunset.
If they weren't coming in on fumes, they were coming in empty.
So for a mile, you've been pushing that car.
About a mile, yeah.
Snaked around block after block after block, hundreds of cars idled, inching towards the gas station. In fact, you needed a helicopter to see just how long the lines actually were.
I mean, the line is going all the way around.
From northern New Jersey south to Philadelphia, east to Long Island, and as far west as Pennsylvania, people were on the hunt for gas.
We've been like, what, 2.5 hours? Yeah. 2.5 hours.
And in some areas, police were deployed to maintain order. Those looking to fill up their tanks or their gas cans waited and waited.
My parents live in central Jersey. They don't have gas. They're working on a generator.
In New York City, 50 to 70% of stations are just not able to sell any fuel. No power, no pumping. In New Jersey, that number climbs to 80%. Before the hurricane hit, 5 refineries along the East Coast were shut down or forced to work at a reduced capacity.
3 of those refiners are up and running once again. 1 of them remains shut down, and 1 of them at least has power going, so it should be a matter of time before they're operating at full capacity.
Today, the Port of New York was reopened to water traffic, allowing backlogged barges to dock and unload. And 60 fuel trucks arrived at 2 Air Force bases. But it will take a few days. Still, patience is running out, along with the gas.
This guy just cut me because I left a little space, but I'm running out of gas. I don't know if I'm going to make it.
Late tonight, at least one New York town has begun rationing 10 gallons per customer, effective immediately.
The next shipment will be at midnight here tonight. The situation is becoming so dire here in New Jersey that both of its senators have now asked President Obama for emergency fuel. Brian.
Katie Tur in North Jersey tonight. Katie, thanks. Again, across a huge region, this storm's impact is staggering. Across such a wide area, it's a cold, dark night. Food's going bad. Kids can't go to school. People can't buy gas, as we've seen. They can't go to work, and many homes are ripped open. More than 4.5 million homes and businesses are still without power across at least 15 states. That's millions of people. From Maine to Michigan, all the way down to North Carolina, let's not forget. Cities and towns battered in between. In some places, it could be weeks before the lights come back on. In Northeast Ohio, tens of thousands in and around Cleveland could be without heat through the weekend. Temperatures in the mid-30s at night. In Connecticut, power crews are making their way through a tangled maze of downed trees and power lines in town after town after town. On the eastern shore of Maryland, the massive task is just starting to fix Ocean City's ravaged beachfront. And they are digging out tonight in West Virginia after parts of that state, as you know, received just under 3 feet of snow.
They wait in the cold, dozens deep, on foot and in the driver's seat.
It's the craziest thing that ever happened. This was like Iraq out here. This was Afghanistan.
It is a scene playing out across the tri-state. Now, more than 48 hours after the superstorm came ashore, the overwhelming majority of gas stations remain closed, crippled by power outages. The ones that are open, like this race star in Carteret, well, they are mobbed.
Has everybody been polite? Does everybody understand that they've got to be patient?
Probably yesterday more people were polite. Today people are cutting in line, like this van that's next to get gas. He cut in at the corner up there.
We shot this video of the line of waiting vehicles. Car after car after car, driver after driver, many of their needles flirting with empty. The line winds around a full suburban block. It just keeps going. The owner of this gas station owns several other service stations, but this is the only one with a backup generator. Once his current stock of fuel runs out, he doesn't expect to get another delivery for days.
What if they run out of gas before you get to the pump?
Well, I just have to wait for the next day.
That's the risk you take?
Yeah.
All right.
We have just in the first new satellite images showing how hard parts of the Jersey Shore got hit. Normandy Beach, not far from Seaside in New Jersey, orderly rows of houses simply erased. This is Maniloking, New Jersey, which went from a perfect beachfront peninsula to having a new inlet from the ocean to the bay. The homes that were there along that stretch of beach now largely gone.
Welcome back. We're following developing news out of Staten Island in New York. Police there have confirmed that the bodies of 2 young boys swept away by floodwaters have been recovered. They are among the now 19 victims killed as a result of this storm on Staten Island. MSNBC's Craig Melvin is live for us right now. And Craig, obviously this one, they're all a loss of life matters, but this being children just breaks your heart in so many ways.
Cameron, indeed it does. A 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, his brother, they were the rushing floodwaters swept them away, we're told. That brought the death toll at 17 here on the island. And then we were told a little bit later that an elderly couple had also been found inside their home. The death toll now on Staten Island, as you mentioned, 19. I want to show you the street behind me. We are in the Midland Beach neighborhood, and believe it or not, the water here has receded. We've talked to a number of folks who live on this street who have come back. Some of them have been able to get into what's left of their homes. Many of them have not. 3 separate families were trapped on their roofs. They told us at one point during the storm, all of them were managed to get taken to safety. We're also hearing from a number of people here on Staten Island who, quite frankly, Tamron, have become quite angry. They've become angry with the response, and a number of them have become angry about the fact that not far from here, the New York City Marathon still set to take place on Sunday. Again, number of folks here angry. We've met one woman, or we hear from one woman now. Take a listen.
People need places to live. They need clothes. They need food. They need shelter. And we're gonna have these children going to school. How are they getting there? How are you getting these kids who are already in the shelters to the schools that they got to go to? They have no clothes. How are you getting? How is everything running by Monday? What miracle are you going to perform?
And again, that's just one woman there. I spoke to Congressman Michael Grimm, who represents this part of Staten Island. He said that this borough has become the forgotten borough. He was very critical, as others have been, of the Red Cross. He said that the Red Cross has not been as responsive as they have been in disasters past. We got a statement a short time ago from the Red Cross. They say that they've got 10 vehicles headed from New York City to Staten Island. They say that one of the problems has been traffic. Traffic, as you know, still bumper to bumper in New York City. But again, folks here becoming very frustrated with the response. The death toll on Staten Island now at 19, and officials say they expect that number to rise.
All right, Craig, thank you very much.
CNBC's Scott Cohen is at the South Street Seaport in Lower Manhattan. That is just south of the Brooklyn Bridge. Scott, explain to all of us what you're seeing in Lower Manhattan, how New Yorkers are dealing today.
Sure, Thomas. It really is a mess here. Let me just give you a sense of where I am. As you said, just south of the Brooklyn Bridge. I'm on Water Street. The East River is a little over a quarter of a mile that way. At the height of Sandy, the water on Water Street was about up to here. So that can give you a sense of the damage that it's done to the buildings here. Behind me is a deli, the Best of New York food deli that's been in business for 20 years. We got a look inside earlier this morning. Basically everything is lost. There still is water up to the ceiling in the basement. They've lost at least about $250,000 worth of infrastructure, another $100,000 worth of food. They do not believe any of it is insured. As I said, the business has been in existence for 20 years. They do not know if they're going to come back. Next door is a health club, New York Sports Club, that is also been inundated. So while we talk about Con Edison, the local utility, having a lot of power start to come back, and it is starting to come on even in pockets of Lower Manhattan, they still are pumping water out of many of these buildings, and so building by building, they may not be able to get power on anytime soon. That gives you a little bit of sense of just what's going on here and how long it's going to take for this key part of the nation's largest city to come back, the financial heart of the city. It's going to be a long climb, Thomas.
It's going to be a long climb, and we keep looking, Scott, at these commuter images that are coming into the city. Absolutely amazing. The lines of cars of people trying to pour back in, the lines at the bus terminals for people who are trying to take buses back into the city. Right now, there is a transportation emergency that was set in place by the governor, meaning that mass transit is free for right now, but we can look at all of the people that are just trying to get back to normal. CNBC's Scott Cohen down at the South Street Seaport Force in Lower Manhattan.
The issue of global warming and climate change and how to deal with it hasn't gotten very much play in this election. But in the aftermath of Sandy, that could change. It's one of the issues raised in the cover of the New Time magazine, Lessons from the Storm, on sale in this part of the country, while the rest of the country will see a pre-election issue. And joining me now from New York is Times managing editor Richard Stengel. Richard, great to see you.
Nice to see you.
You've got two covers, and those of us living in this part of the country and thinking about the coast and seeing all of the devastation really want to know more about climate change, about these coastal communities, the kinds of issues that Governor Cuomo in New York raised and that we have not heard anything of from either of these candidates in any of the debates.
Yes, I mean, Governor Cuomo was quite eloquent about it. He talked about this idea that we are having 100-year events every couple of years these days, and it's you can't have an absolute cause and effect between climate change and these events, but there are certain man-made aspects of all of this, which is that we're building in places we shouldn't be building. Our infrastructure is old. Our transportation infrastructure is from the last century. And we are not accommodating ourselves to the new reality, the idea that these kinds of events may happen more frequently. I mean, if you look at the infrastructure in places like the Netherlands, you know, they've been spending 50 years preparing for events like this, and we haven't been. I mean, we're very much more exposed, and the fact that it hasn't been talked about in the election, that nobody's talking about infrastructure except folks like Governor Cuomo, is a problem.
Richard, when I was looking at the coverage the other night, the night of the storm, and we had our correspondents from NBC and from the Weather Channel standing there in Battery Park City, that seawall was practically non-existent. I mean, the water came up to 13 feet and easily breached. We saw the subways flooded. We have not done the infrastructure repairs. We all want to have the option of living along the Jersey Shore, and I don't know what the answer
Right.
there is for the beautiful vistas of living so close to the ocean. But you know, how do you approach this with an old city like New York?
I think there has to be I mean, some of the candidates have talked about it over the course of the year, and there are governors who have talked about an infrastructure bank. But again, if you look at Manhattan, I mean, Manhattan may seem like a 21st century city to us. I mean, in fact, it's an 18th and 19th century city. There's so much landfill downtown. There aren't berms or barriers downtown. The subway is about 100 years old. It was a miracle 100 years ago. It now is, you know, an antique. And the problem is that there isn't any kind of overwhelming desire on the part of public officials, states, voters to actually finance this kind of thing, because it will take billions and billions and billions of dollars and decades.
Well, you're at least talking about it. You're raising it with your cover story. And I should point out that the political articles here, the debate between E.J. Dionne and Rick Lowry on, you know, the two campaigns, and the piece that Joel Stein wrote about Gary Johnson and how his libertarian run could actually change the Nevada and Colorado results. Must reading. So this is a really great issue of Time magazine. Richard Stenkel, thanks so much for joining us.
Developing news right now. Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano is in New York right now to meet with state and local officials and view the ongoing recovery efforts after Hurricane Sandy. Now, the issues they are sure to address at this point, the millions of people still without power, also massive commuter problems today, thousands of people. Take a look at this. Those are people. It looks like ants almost from that vantage point, stranded by limited public transportation. These are images coming in from earlier today. This is in Brooklyn. People trying to get on the bus to come into Manhattan. Thousands more trying to drive have been stuck in traffic backups up to 4 hours as they attempt to cross city bridges and tunnels, those that are open. Since this morning, only cars carrying 3 people or more have been allowed to enter Manhattan. Residents are also in the grip of a massive fuel crunch brought on by power outages and limited fuel deliveries. People lucky enough to get gas to a gas station, well, they've been facing lines 2 miles long as well. MSNBC's Richard Louie joins us, and there again, another line. What are people telling you there, Richard?
Hey there, Tamron. You know what they're saying is, when can we get some gas? This line is so long, it is 2 towns long. It's that far. 60 cars. We walked it earlier today. If you were to try to get in that line, it would take you 2 hours to get through it. And as you drive, you'd pass by one empty gas station. The reason why they're empty, because they ran out of gas or they don't have electricity. If they don't have electricity, they can't get gas. Spoke to some of these folks that are in line earlier. Could be 3 hours now. This is what they told me.
But we need the gas because she's pregnant and we have to go to the hospital, you know, back in the house, you know.
I'm going to have a C-section, so we need the gas, you know.
To go to the hospital.
Yeah.
So it'll probably be like 2-3 hours before I get gas.
2-3 hours is what you're waiting for?
Yeah, well.
Do you think you might run out on the way?
I push it.
My car is stranded over there on 69th Street, and I got no way to get it. Everybody down there has no gas, so my friend just called me on his way to work and told me this guy was open, so I jumped on my bike and flew down here.
Joe Valdez biked almost an hour to this gas station. He had to walk an hour and a half back 3 towns over to get to his car that ran out of gas. I want to show you what's still happening here at the gas station in Ridgefield, New Jersey. This is the gas tanks, and the pricing right now, $3.55 a gallon. That's about average, Tamron, that what we're seeing across the state of New Jersey. This is a common sign, cash only. The reason why they're doing that is it's faster transactionally. They also make a couple more cents. The police have been putting out these cones, really common to see in New Jersey, along with police cars. This station, by the way, they got 9,000 gallons. Yesterday they ran out. Tamara, by our estimations, they'll probably run out today by 10 p.m. or so.
All right, Richard Louie live for us. Thank you, Richard. And if you would like to help, by the way, the victims of Hurricane Sandy, you can log on to NBCnews.com, click on the How to Help link for a list of organizations that are accepting donations. You can avoid a lot of the scams that people have been reporting online by going and get legitimate information there. And tomorrow night, NBC Universal is holding a benefit telethon for the storm victims. Bruce Springsteen, Bon Jovi, Christina Aguilera, just a few of the performers. You can watch the telethon live on MSNBC, 8 Eastern time tomorrow.
And joining me now on the phone, New York Congressman Peter King, whose Long Island district, including Long Beach and Jones Beach, has been especially hard hit. Congressman, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you've been touring the district. First of all, what are the most critical needs and where?
The southern part of the district, South Massapequa, Long Beach, Freeport, Lindenhurst, these areas have been devastated. They're just shells of homes. No two tragedies are alike, but there are parts of Long Island, the South Shore, which look very much like Katrina. People's furniture out in the street, walls gone from their homes, lifelong mementos destroyed. Fortunately, there has not been a great loss of life. I believe the last number we saw was about 3 or maybe 4 have been killed. There was a very good effort by all levels of government, the state, county, towns, and villages, and so there's a lot of cooperation. But the main thing right now, I would say, is to get people's power back on. There's 1.1 million customers of the Long Island Power Authority, and over 900,000 lost their power. This is it's just unprecedented, and that includes the hospitals, homes, police stations, fire departments, schools, you're right down the line. But it's, again, almost 90% of the residents in Nassau County and Suffolk County have lost their power.
I mean, you've been everywhere. You yesterday were helping constituents clean their homes in Seaford Harbor, I understand. But as a committee chairman, you have unique power and authority. Certainly you've been in touch with FEMA and other Homeland Security officials. What more can they do for you?
Well, first, let me say, Secretary Napolitano did call me, and she actually called me when I was at the home of, believe it or not, a 9/11 mother who lost 2 sons, and now her home is devastated. I was actually there with her, and Secretary Napolitano happened to call me at that time. She spoke extensively to me, spoke extensively to Mrs. Haskell, her mother. Also, FEMA is actually implanted in the Nassau Police Emergency Command Center. We have FEMA is right there, doing an outstanding job. Right now, they're helping us go door to door to locate people that might be missing. We're trying to locate more fuel to come in. And then also we're setting up locations in Nassau, Suffolk County, Nassau County at the community college, Suffolk County at a school in Lindenhurst, where people can go. Really, it's going to be an all-purpose center run by FEMA and the counties, which will provide emergency assistance, whether it's housing, whether it's aid to rebuild their homes. But right now, I would say the main thing is to restore people's power because, again, the colder weather is coming. You have many people who are senior citizens who are either who've lost their homes or they're living in homes with absolutely no power whatsoever. And that's having an impact. There's an impact on gasoline. There's, believe it or not, it's hard to find ATM machines because the Port of New York has been closed. There's a shortage of food. There's no refrigeration. So it's a lot of people eating, I'm not being funny, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and things like that. And this is in the New York, Long Island metropolitan area. It's become very, very primitive over the last several days. Also, a lot of traffic lights are out. There's been a series of accidents, and also there's unfortunately always a increase in burglaries and lootings during times like this. But the Nassau and Suffolk Police and the state police have joined in, and that situation is under control. But it's too bad that we even have to face that issue.
Now, I just want to quickly ask you, I know politics should stop at the flood water's edge, but there's been a lot of criticism of Chris Christie, the Republican keynoter from the convention, being, side by side with President Obama and praising President Obama. Do you have any problem with what your Republican colleague in New Jersey did yesterday?
No, listen, President Obama is doing what he has to do. Governor Christie is doing what he feels he has to do. But, Andrea, I live and breathe politics, but to show you how I've become so obsessed with this tragedy in my district, I got a call from one of your colleagues at NBC News last night, asked me what I thought about what Governor Christie said about President Obama. I had no idea. I knew Christie had attacked him. That's how it was based on past performance. I had no idea. I'm living in a bubble right now. This is so again. I mean, if I had to look at it overall and the stock politics, it's the short-term benefits to the president. By Election Day, I think people will make whatever decision they were going to make, and obviously I'm hoping it's for Governor Romney. But listen, the president's doing a good job. I give him credit for that. Governor Christie, Mayor Bloomberg, everyone's doing what they have to do. And in times of crisis, that's important for the country.
Thank you so much. Thanks for what you're doing out there for all your folks, and good luck to you in the district.
As I've stressed for the past several days, getting New York City back on its feet means meeting 2 paramount challenges: restoring mass transit and restoring electric power to areas where it's been disrupted. And there's progress to report on both fronts today. First, as to mass transit, the MTA really did a phenomenal job of getting subway service partially restored in just a few days. And once again, I want to thank Governor Cuomo and MTA Chairman Joe Lhota for deciding to waive the fares on all subways and buses through tomorrow. It was the right decision. Wish they'd do it all along. Unfortunately, they can't do that until Shelley Silver comes up with another ways of funding them. But I would never say that here when Shelley's standing next to me. They're also doing seriously a great job of getting commuter rail service back up and running. There's still plenty of people whose commutes remain unending, and many more people who were, at least today, have started to be able to get back to work, but it's a very difficult commute. The restrictions on passenger vehicles that the city and state have put on most of the main bridges into Manhattan and the Lincoln Tunnel were implemented today, and while it helped alleviate some of the severe congestion we saw yesterday, traffic this morning remains very heavy. We urge everyone to take mass transit wherever possible. Today's limited East River ferry service resumes. Staten Island ferry service we think will resume within the next day or so and should be running on full schedule by Saturday. The 3 airports serving our city have reopened. However, there remains no subway service in Manhattan south of 34th Street and between Manhattan and downtown Brooklyn. Now, there's no question that travel into our city yesterday was extremely difficult. In fact, the roads were so clogged that we really did worry about getting emergency service vehicles through. And so no matter how inconvenient it may be to stop people from bringing their cars into the city or making it more difficult to do so, safety is once again our paramount concern, not convenience. And so we did take some steps to mitigate that problem. Yesterday, as you know, I issued an order restricting auto traffic into Manhattan on the 4 East River bridges during the busiest hours of the day and night to vehicles carrying at least 3 people. Governor Cuomo has made the same restriction effective for traffic entering Manhattan on the Triborough, Henry Hudson bridges and through the Lincoln Tunnel. The restrictions began this morning at 6 a.m. and remain in effect until midnight. They will also be in effect from 6 a.m. until midnight Friday. Vehicles exempt from them include commercial vehicles, taxis, emergency and paratransit vehicles, vehicles with handicap plates or placards, livery cabs, and other for-hire and buses. I should note that the NYPD and DOT are working with the MTA and Port Authority to put these measures in place. Now, some have asked for special treatment, but the bottom line is we are just not equipped to grant exemptions. Hopefully tomorrow will be the last day these restrictions apply, so please bear with us. I know it's annoying, I know it's inconvenient, but we have to think about the security and safety of the people here. During the morning and evening rush hours, you should know that police recruits are directing traffic at intersections where traffic signals are not operating. The news from Con Ed is that we should have most of the traffic lights and the power for those areas back by certainly before the end of the weekend, and my hope is at the beginning of the weekend. Some have already come back. We're also establishing bus lanes on key corridors. Please stay out of the bus lanes if you're not a bus. We also resumed limited East River ferry service from Brooklyn and Queens to the landings at 34th Street and Lower Manhattan, and I strongly urge everyone to not take their cars into Manhattan. If you have any other travel option, even walking across the bridge, please do it. It'd probably be faster than taking your car. Con, as I said, is making progress in restoring electric service. Since yesterday, the lights have come back on for many people in South Brooklyn, on Staten Island, and in some small parts of Lower Manhattan. And crews from as far away as California are working around the clock to restore power city-wide. Most of them are working where they have overhead lines. An enormous number of trees have come down. They face a huge job. Currently, some 534,000 customers citywide remain without electrical service. Now, the good news is that roughly 40% of that total, some 228,000, are in Manhattan, most of them concentrated below 34th Street. That when Con Ed fixes one station, an awful lot of that should come back very quickly. It's an easier job than going out with every single individual power line down. There are some 43,000 customers without power in the Rockaways, and Con Ed is focusing there as well. These are huge numbers, but they are down substantially from the 643,000 customers who had no power at this time yesterday. The task of restoring power is going to take a lot of time, but the good news is they are working aggressively. In fact, Con Ed informs me that they are making very good progress, even a little bit better than what they had anticipated. They also tell us that there are parts of the city served by overhead lines that might not get done until the end of next week. There are just so many of them. We'd have volunteer crews from across the country, but it's just an enormous job, and you have to go up in a bucket and fix each one as you get to it. In the meantime, for anyone without power, if you're using candles, and I can't stress this enough, exercise extreme caution. Do not leave them burning through the night, and don't leave them unattended. I said this yesterday, and then last night we had a serious fire in the Rockaways that was started by candles. We just don't need any more fatalities.
A select number of subway lines in New York City are up and running again this morning, but millions are still without power on this long road to recovery from Hurricane Sandy. Take a look at some new and chilling images. These are from the Jersey Shore. So many homes destroyed and the entire beachfront completely washed out in many towns. The storm is responsible, we are told, for at least 74 deaths. Meantime, 5 million plus are still without power in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. That's households, far more people, and that includes Lower Manhattan as well. It could be several more days before the lights are back on. In some flooded areas like Hoboken, New Jersey, it could take several days just to pump all the water out. Some residents there are still stranded in their homes, and the National Guard has been helping. Joining me now, Democratic Congressman Ed Markey of Massachusetts, who is on the Energy and Commerce and Natural Resources Committees. It's always good to see you, Congressman. Thank you.
Good morning, Chris.
Obviously, the immediate questions are about cleanup and making sure that people are safe. But this has raised questions by a lot of people about, is this about climate change? And a new article in the New York Times says scientists are not sure if the storm was caused or made worse by human-induced global warming. But I wonder what your take is and what this means to the conversation.
Well, I don't think there's any question that this is related to climate change. The oceans off of the northeast coast are at historic highs in terms of temperature, so that's additional heat that's going into the system. That leads to actually higher seas, and that leads ultimately to the much greater harm which can be done in New Jersey, in Connecticut, in New York City. So there's no question it's related, and it's intensifying. Earlier this year, an iceberg twice the size of Manhattan actually broke off of Greenland, which we could actually call Denier Island because there'd be enough room on it for all of the Republican deniers of climate change. This is intensifying, and we just basically have to change course, or else what we're going to see, what we've seen here, is going to be repeated over and over and over again. And this is $50 billion, perhaps, in damages. That's an extreme weather tax that's going to have to be paid rather than trying to avoid the worst consequences, which would be a much better pathway.
There are other politicians who have brought this up, and let me play for you just a couple of clips from the last few days.
Anyone who says there's not a dramatic change in weather patterns, I think, is denying reality. And I would like to say that this is probably the last occurrence we will have. I don't believe that.
What is clear is that the storms that we've experienced in the last year or so around this country and around the world are much more severe than before.
So if this is just the start, if it's going to be more of the same, what is your priority short term, and what do we need to be looking at long term?
Well, the American people, they're concerned about Mother Nature. The Republicans, Mitt Romney, they're concerned about the Koch brothers and the oil companies that are largely fueling the independent expenditures which are going into this presidential race. So this frames the election on Tuesday very well. On the one hand, Mitt Romney says he wants to keep tax breaks for big oil companies, but abolish them for wind energy, which does not emit any carbon dioxide. That's basically a frame which gives people a choice as to which direction they want to go in. President Obama raised fuel economy standards to 55 miles per gallon by the year 2025. That not only backs out 3 million barrels of oil a day from the Persian Gulf, all of the oil the United States imports from the Persian Gulf, but it also reduces by 6 billion metric tons 1 full year of carbon dioxide emissions up into the atmosphere. Mitt Romney is saying he will roll back those increases in the fuel economy standards. So all the way down the line, there is a sharp contrast here. There are no emergency rooms for planets. We either engage in preventative care here and reduce the amount of greenhouse gases that go up into the atmosphere, or we are going to see ever greater intensifying catastrophic events hitting our country and causing tremendous damage to the American people.
Congressman Markey, thanks so much for coming on the program. We appreciate it.
3 days after Sandy left the Northeast in crisis, finally signs of recovery. In Toms River, firefighters began moving a boat washed into the center of a street. Police say they're making progress clearing roads along the shore left impassable by sand and homes tossed into the street.
You feel you're going to wake up any minute. You know, it's sickening. It's sad.
For evacuees like Robert Ridgway, who hasn't been allowed back to Seaside Park to see his home, the wait is agonizing.
What can you do? You know, you just got to believe in tomorrow, and you know, hopefully everybody can rebuild.
In Hoboken, people are pumping murky flood water out of garages. In Queens, assessing the damage to more than 100 burnout homes. Those seeking routine, however, are encountering one delay after the next. In Jersey City, a line for gas 100 cars long. In Brooklyn, thousands waited for buses as public transportation resumes. Those devastated by Sandy moving on, but still struggling to accept what's been lost. In Toms River, New Jersey, I'm Danielle Lee, NBC News.
20,000 people trapped. Hoboken, a virtual island, as 500 million gallons of water overwhelmed this square-mile town. By Wednesday morning, the National Guard showed up in force, rescuing people trapped inside their homes and delivering much-needed food and supplies to those still stranded. As the lakes of this mixture of water, sewage, and heating oil turned into ponds, residents got their first chance to assess the damage.
How's it smell in there? I don't want to know.
The water literally came up. Look at the front door.
Like pretty much everyone else, John Rotundo got 4 feet in his home. Unlike everyone else, this isn't his only worry. He's got a home in Monmouth Beach.
Just trying to stay strong for my wife and my kids. And you know, we have 2 houses that are totally devastated.
The smell was so overwhelming that
Upstairs and inside for almost 72 hours, his wife Lisa trying to remain calm.
Monday night was probably the most terrifying night of my life.
Amid the darkness, a bright spot as one family in a neighborhood with power shared with those less fortunate.
Me and my dad thought since we had power the whole time during the hurricane, why don't we help other people who don't have power charge their electronics, such as their phones, their iPads, their laptops, whatever they need charged.
Place to charge our phones just so that we can let other people know that we're okay and that we're going to get through this.
Officials say it will take at least 2 days to pump out all this water. The grim reality, this town of 50,000 is only now starting to grasp. I'm meteorologist Stephanie Abrams.
Couldn't get out. We watched the storm flood up. My car rise up. My car's stuck. The yards, we watched everything blow around, things break, trees fall off, all the kids were scared, sitting in the pitch black dark with a couple of candles, flashlight that we had.
With Sandy, the National Guard is here, and they are crossing that bridge into the nightmare on the other side. Despite a mandatory evacuation order, hundreds stayed and paid for it.
We heard it was supposed to be bad, but like I said, we didn't have the electric, so we didn't have the news.
It seems as though it's like a blur, because I think this aftermath of the cleanup and looking at what I'm looking at now, which looks like what I'm told would be a war zone, because I've never experienced a war, I think I'm in survival mode, so I'm just going. I'm just doing one step at a time.
It wasn't just the water. Debris, some chunks the size of this 30-foot yacht, were smashing around in the black of night. It broke free 3 miles from here and anchored in the middle of Highway 37.
Well, it's got bent props, bent shafts, they're expensive, but you fix them. A few dings and dingers on the other side, but the hulls have got integrity, so my plan is to lift it, bring it over to a marina over here, put it in the water, and had it towed back over to the marina.
The New Jersey National Guard, urban search and rescue teams, even skilled tree cutters are on the Jersey shore right now. The soul of New Jersey is hurting tonight.
We're all alive and well, and we're out now with at least a little bit of clothes on our back to get by for the next couple of days.
There have been a lot of impacts from Hurricane Sandy, and one of those is large objects floating miles away. We had a big boat behind me that's been picked up and moved out of the way, 15,000 pounds of boat. And now we're taking care of this, a big diesel tank. We think this floated across Barnegat Bay. That's in the background. Beyond that is Seaside Heights and the Barrier Island. This floated over here during the hurricane, and it started leaking diesel fuel this morning. You can see the big spot down there on the sand. So now Tonks Waste Oil Service has showed up to take care of the problem. They are draining the tank The operator says it's about half full, so we'll make this a safer area. I think the tank will be there till further notice. Let's go across the bridges and show you what's going on over there. Just a total mess from the hurricane. The casino pier wiped out, the amusement park a total loss. As we've been showing you all morning, the iconic picture of the mousetrap, the roller coaster sitting in the Atlantic, and houses, in some cases, leveled. And as much as 6 feet of sand on the beaches. The problem right now, still natural gas leaks, and that's why they're not letting any residents back until further notice. The weather will be cool, which is not good for the 1.7 million customers still without power in New Jersey, as temperatures will drop into the 30s and down to freezing by the first of the week.
3 days after Sandy's landfall, New Jersey is still reeling, especially along its shoreline. Wednesday, the president witnessed the extent of it all firsthand. In a flyover with New Jersey's governor, he saw miles of battered coastline, quaint seaside communities now in ruins, some still underwater. Emotions are still raw.
I got nothing left of memories or anything else. Everything's ruined.
We are here for you, and we will not forget. We will follow up to make sure that you get all the help that you need until you've rebuilt.
Everywhere you look, damaged homes and businesses, some barely standing, others not at all. The barrier community of Seaside Heights is uninhabitable. The site of its Boardwalk roller coaster actually in the sea, becoming an icon of this disaster.
It's just unthinkable.
It seems like nothing along the coast is where it should be. Boats on land.
Somebody said, Dad, your boat's sitting on the middle of the median. We saw it on Facebook.
Across the river, water continues to be pumped out of subways in lower Manhattan. Limited service begins today.
We are on the road to recovery.
But along that road, the lines for fuel still stretch for miles.
This is all real right now.
This morning, New York remains a tale of two cities, the haves and the have-nots, divided by those with power and those without.
Everything is gone. But we still got each other.
A bond survivors desperately need as they struggle through what Sandy left behind.
Rescue vehicles had no trouble going down Atlantic Avenue since Atlantic City is virtually a ghost town. Only those who need to be here are let in, and it's eerily quiet. Even though there are some signs of normalcy in the city, like the casino signs lit up behind me, if you go out into the outlying residential areas that got hit hard by the storm, it's anything but normal there.
This is the worst I've ever seen come through here.
Rich DeChocho has his 2 sons to help him clean up the house he and his wife Beth built 2 decades ago in the Chelsea Heights neighborhood of Atlantic City.
We did most of the work with our bare hands. 20 years, you know? Laid every hardwood floor. Put every wall up.
They tried to ride out the storm.
This is our home. Where are we gonna go?
But they went to higher ground as Sandy intensified. When they returned, they found the water had been up to Beth's waist. They'll have to replace appliances and wiring and walls. But Rich has a good job at one of the casinos, and when they look out over their water view, there's not a thought of leaving.
We'll never leave. We just redo. And everybody's healthy, so that's what we're thankful for.
It's what just about everyone in this close-knit neighborhood of Atlantic City plans to do. For the Weather Channel, I'm Scott Newell.
What's your car?
That is my car.
An all too familiar scene these days. Storm-soaked residents trying to get moving following the devastation of Sandy.
He's helping. Okay.
Want to take the subway? It's going to be a while. Some are still flooded with 30 to 40 feet of water. And believe it or not, it gets worse. Not only are the trains stalled, the governor of New York points to another big issue with underground flooding.
And when the water fills the tunnels, that means Con Edison has issues because much of Con Ed's equipment is in the tunnels. So getting the water out of the tunnels is probably one of the main orders of business right now.
Getting the subways back up and running to full power and getting electricity back on would be warmly greeted by many.
We don't have power or water.
That's got to be tough with a family.
It's hard, and a 12-day-old.
Oh, 12 days?
Yeah.
Oh, how precious.
It's difficult, yeah. Everybody likes to shower, and when it's cold out, you like to go home to a warm shower, and that's not happening right now.
Also hit hard by Sandy, New York's LaGuardia Airport, underwater. Thousands of flights affected. And if you're thinking of taking a yellow cab in the city, you may have to wait longer than usual based on the number here, underwater. There's devastation, widespread devastation, and it needs addressing soon.
We have to rebuild, and as New York always does, we'll rebuild better than we were before.
Strong words, but for now, New Yorkers are left to their own devices.
This is the preferred method of transportation.
They'll get around the best way they can. After all, this is New York City. I'm meteorologist Jim Cantori in Battery Park.
Denise and Peter Flint spent the day playing non-electronic games with neighbor Jim Andron. Their house in Devon, Pennsylvania lost power as the storm moved inland, so they turned in for the night.
It was getting a little nippy when we woke up this morning, but
it's pretty warm outside.
Yeah.
Fortunately, it wasn't freezing out.
No, very fortunate.
They've been getting by on what stayed cold in the refrigerator. Fortunately, Peter has a mobile Wi-Fi device, so he can go online with his battery-powered laptop. But with no TV, they couldn't see what was happening in New York, where 2 of their 3 kids are.
I mean, we would get texts from them that they were okay, but I missed not being able to see what was happening to them.
What killed their electricity was trees falling on power lines. Widespread power outages kept police in several cities directing traffic where dozens of stoplights were dark. They also kept many businesses closed. Devon Murphy's power is out, so she took her daughter and a friend to get a sandwich.
Well, I have 2 children, 1st and 4th grade, and they woke up this morning at 7 o'clock and said, okay, now what do we do? And I thought that's going to make for a very long day.
They set up shop at Wegmans Cafe, bringing a power strip to charge iPhones and iPads.
Maybe past dinner time the power might come back on.
That's what thousands are hoping. And crews working 16-hour shifts are doing everything in their power to make it happen. In Philadelphia, I'm Scott Newell, the Weather Channel.
Residents here in Breezy Point thought water would be the biggest threat from Sandy. Not fire. The flames burned, devastating this tiny community, destroying more than 100 homes and damaging 20 more. Sandy's winds whipped through the town, spreading the fire across the entire neighborhood.
Looked like a forest fire out in the Midwest. The winds were just devastating, blowing from one building to the next one, and those buildings were close together.
We had the fire scanner on all night. The fire department couldn't get to Breezy. Yeah. It's horrible.
It took more than 200 firefighters to control the fire.
Devastation. And our house is, in somewhat good condition. Look behind you here.
All now 118 of our neighbors' houses have gone.
Everyone here is very close, and it's a shame. It's so sad.
But in the rubble, perhaps a sign of strength and hope. Surrounded by ruin in every direction, a statue of the Virgin Mary stands tall.
3 of 7 tunnels, Nick, is what we're dealing with here. Here's probably the worst one, though. We're as far south as this is probably the lowest one here. The South Ferry subway station, you come in here on the Staten Island Ferry and take this uptown. This would be one of your choices here. But down there's about 30 to 40 feet of water. All right, so you've got 3 stories worth of water down there. That is just, I can't even describe it. The smell is strong enough so that you spend about 30 to 40 seconds down there. Your eyes burn, your nose burns. I was talking to a gentleman who was doing live shots for MSNBC, and he said, look, we were down there for about a half hour, and we were starting to get dizzy. So, that has to be pumped out. The Army Corps is here. They will be responsible for that. They're talking about that right now. And if we can get one of their officers away, we will ask them how they're going to proceed with that. So that is a huge deal, obviously. I mean, I just walked around to the Brooklyn Battery Bridge. You should see the water there. It's got to be 12 feet high, at least. I don't know how much of an underpass that is there, but it's just absolutely covered. The Midtown, also the Holland Tunnel as well, full of water. So those are causing major traffic issues here. I want to show you the video here. We got a couple pieces I want to show you. This is a Staten Island aerials, first of all. And I mean, look at this, guys. I mean, this is water that's come in. You can see the sheen to the water there. That's obviously showing us that we have, some kind of fuel, whether it's heating fuel, diesel fuel, as a part of this mixture that people are walking around in. That's why we really don't want you walking around in the water, because it is really toxic. It is absolutely toxic. And this is the first picture that I saw in Hoboken, New Jersey, which just boggled my mind. I mean, look at that. I mean, what's that, 100 cabs right there in the water? I mean, just absolutely underwater. And more than likely, this is seawater, so the electronics in all of those vehicles is absolutely shot. They are totaled, as would be the case.
I want to take you to the map here and show you now Long Beach Island, and the area is just to the south of Seaside Heights. So here is the southern end of Long Beach Island. The main town there is called Beach Haven, and on the mainland there's a town called Tuckerton, and in between there's a body of water called Little Egg Harbor. Now you see that area right there in Tuckerton where all those houses are jammed together. Take a look at this picture. This was the way it looked there in Tuckerton before the storm. So you see they built these canals here and they built these houses on these man-made spits of land there, and this is a popular place to live and retire. Actually have a lot of retirement folks there. And then look at this today as the helicopter from WCAU went there, and then across the bay in Beach Haven, now across Little Egg Harbor and Beach Haven, here's downtown Beach Haven. This is away from the water. So what's happened here is the ocean has come over the dune and pushed the dune out and put all this sand here in the streets, but then the water has gotten trapped there. So they're in downtown Beach Haven, streets after street here, from Atlantic Avenue down to Beach Avenue over to Bay Avenue. They've got water that's standing there, and there's no way really for that to run out quickly. And this town of Beach Haven has been there hundreds of years. Folks in the Philadelphia area and New Jersey area that go to the LBI, it's called Long Beach Island, and no doubt their parents did, and probably their grandparents and their great-grandparents went down there. It's been down there a long time. So from Tuckerton on one side on the mainland over to Beach Haven and all the way up and down the Jersey Shore, that's the scene there. And that's just representative all the way down as far south as the Jersey Shore goes down to Cape May, and then you saw Seaside Heights on up to Point Pleasant Beach. These are all in a line there, barrier islands and seashore communities, all with their houses swept off the pilings. It's the worst it's been since 1962, and what was called then the Great March Storm, or known today as the Ash Wednesday Storm, which was actually even worse there, if you can imagine that. But now there's so much more there that the damage totals may actually be more.
We're at the South Ferry subway station here in the southern tip of Manhattan, and as you can see right here, the water now sitting at least halfway through. You can't even see where you normally swipe your card to get through the turnstiles, and off to the side here are some of the watermarks. This is going all the way up to the ceiling. Then it went down about 1.5 feet, and now about a 1.25 feet. And just to show you how deep it is at this moment, about a day and a half after, about 5 feet tall. So the question is, will they be able to pump out what can hold about 2.5 million gallons the next 4 or 5 days? And this is just one of 7 tunnels that were either fully or partially inundated because of Hurricane Sandy. On top of that, 5 million people that cannot use the system today. There are also those who are in cars. They can't get across to Manhattan, or they can't get across to Brooklyn. 2 of the tunnels are currently closed down. The Brooklyn Battery Tunnel was filling up like a bathtub, as you might remember. They estimate at the moment, according to what we're hearing on the ground, it could be till after Thanksgiving before they're able to pump all of that water out. The amount of water that is could fill the Empire State Building. You can see the sort of tasks that are ahead for the Transportation Authority here in New York City.
Right now we've got an 85-mile-per-hour storm. It is moving north-northwest now, so we've got a definitive northwest turn.
We've made the turn now.
We've made the turn. There are 8 million people that travel by the subway in New York City.
People are just going to stay home. We really may not have any other choice.
Please listen to what your state and local officials are saying. When they tell you to evacuate, you need to evacuate. Do not delay. This is a serious storm, and it could potentially have fatal consequences if people haven't acted quickly.
We are now to the point of no return.
Look at this Atlantic. Here comes another wave. Look at this wave now coming up over into the dune. And we've already got water in the streets. Got a lake here in town between the rain and the fact that we can't get anything to drain very easily.
At 4:30 this morning, there was a lot more of this beach. It is now eroded.
It's a big storm moving in that has gathered the attention of a lot of people here in Narragansett, Rhode Island. The surf is way up. Here's one of those opportunities to move forward a little bit. We are running out of real estate here in Narragansett. The surge has certainly continued to come in as we've had throughout the afternoon. And the last time we did a report for you, we were over by those shrubs that are in the background again. That water came in quick.
I'm coming to you from Stonington, Connecticut. Power's out all over the peninsula. Not expecting much improvements over the next several hours. My goodness, the wind has just been insane. People are going to wake up, and this community is going to look very different than it did 24 to 48 hours ago. Goodness gracious.
Any comparison to anything else you've seen?
No, never. I told the folks before, I was watching video of Lafayette and Ortley and Seaside. There are homes in the middle of Route 35. Off of their foundations. The amusement pier at Seaside Park, the Bogfoon and the roller coaster in the ocean. No, I've never seen anything like this in my life. No, very difficult day. Very difficult day. He's alive. That's the important thing. We'll rebuild. We'll make we're tough. We're tough folks, so don't you worry about that. It's devastating. It's absolutely devastating, and we're just at the beginning. We'll assess the damages, and we'll rebuild. And that's the way it works in New Jersey. We don't back off.
So you did not, or no city official told people just stay put, stay where you are?
I didn't stutter.
Atlantic City's Mayor Lorenzo Langford sounding off on the Weather Channel about whether or not he made an evacuation order for his city's residents mandatory. The city is now dealing with catastrophic flooding, with many stranded and nowhere to go.
The governor is dead wrong. He is either ill-advised and misinformed or flat out lying.
Well, why would he do that, sir? I'm just asking, because it seems like...
Well, sir,
go ahead.
You have to ask the governor that. You would have to ask the governor why he said that.
We did just that. I asked Governor Christie that very question. We spoke with the mayor this morning on the Weather Channel, and he said that you were dead wrong about this. What exactly is the mixed message here? How did you order the evacuation order, and he said no, or did that even happen? Do we know what happened?
Yeah. We know what happened. He told people they could shelter in Atlantic City shelters as shelters of last resort. And now he wants to deny it, but he said it, and we sent 75 buses to Atlantic City to evacuate people, and we had people telling our bus drivers, the mayor said we could shelter in the city, we're going to stay.
All right, well,
so I know the mayor now is embarrassed and wants to make up another story, but the facts are the facts.
Look at this water, it just continues to roll in. Crazy. We still have a ways to go before we get to high tide. We've had gusts as high as 94 miles per hour. Did you hear that? What the heck was that?
We've been predicting this incredibly extreme event, and now what we think we're going to see is the worst storm ever in some locations. Having this hurricane intensifying in the middle of this nor'easter. So who gets hit by this hurricane part is going to have everything that comes with a hurricane.
If water comes up the street, we're out of here.
Everybody else is going to have everything that comes with a monster nor'easter and a part of the hurricane.
The heavy, wet snow really is a concern here, not in the least because there's so much worry about power outages.
So this is going to be just a stunningly spectacular event in the worst possible kind of way.
As Hurricane Sandy slammed into the eastern seaboard, it left behind a wake of destruction and at the same time some incredible stories, including this one at Breezy Point that involves flooding, fire, and a bit of irony. But in this community behind me, this area just was devastation. This was first inundated by floodwaters from the storm surge that came in from the Atlantic, and as it did so, inundated the houses, actually knocking a few of them off the foundation. And when that happened, you had some natural gas leaks.
One of those leaks was near some down power lines, and then fire erupted. Take a look at the video. These flames spread all across this area, engulfing some 100 houses in flame. You can see just the video is just horrendous. Firefighters working very, very hard to do what they could to put out the fires. So you had the flooding, you had the fires. Here comes the ironic part. Just a few weeks ago, I was actually here covering a tornadic event. We had 2 tornadoes in the area, one in Brooklyn, the other at the very end of this community. How amazing that you had these incredible catastrophic events, one a tornado, the other the fire and the flooding, and at the same time, no fatalities, no losses of life. So you have the tragedy, but also got to look at it as a very lucky community.
I've got a little bit of graphics here to help maybe the public visualize how that and what exactly happened. Take a look. We'll start here with Sunday evening. The timeline will be up at the top. Hurricanes are warm core, and I'm showing you a level about 20,000 feet. So all the thunderstorms pump up and release a lot of heat. So there is Sandy. It's purely a hurricane. Now, one of our more normal weather systems that have cold fronts that travel across the United States was coming eastbound. They're cold cored aloft in the jet stream that revolves about that. Now, as we step ahead in time, we go into Monday morning. Sandy continued to move to the north. It's still warm cored, but that cold air continued to surge a little bit east. Even itself, it was getting a little bit of a separate low pressure center at that point, as they often do out near their leading edge. We'll go one more time step Monday evening, and now the interaction between Sandy and its counterclockwise winds has pulled some of that cold air all the way off to the coast, and now the winds about that cold core system have turned more from the east to west. That pushes Sandy in turn westbound. That's why it made the strong left turn. But also now, some of that cold air is about to wrap around Sandy, and so now the transition is about to take place from being warm cored to becoming cold cored. And by the time we get to Tuesday morning, Sandy is now the superstorm, no longer a hurricane. Surrounded on the east side, the cold air has wrapped around it. One surprising thing about Sandy, well, we had not forecasted any tornadoes with this, but it's kind of unusual because of all the landfalling tropical storms and hurricanes since 1990, they've averaged 14 tornadoes, 75% of the tropical storms, and 91% of the hurricanes have produced tornadoes. Sandy did not. A large reason for that, the waters offshore of New England, which would have been the prime area, are pretty cool. They're pretty far from the Gulf Stream, so typically it's hurricanes and tropical storms making landfall farther to the south that have the greatest chance of having that warm air, the unstable air, and producing tornadoes.
From Fox this Thursday night, the painful, lingering effects of a record-breaking superstorm. On top of all the death and destruction, growing shortages on everything from gasoline to food to batteries for flashlights, and there is no telling how long this will last. Right now, the biggest problem in the storm zone, aside from the destruction, seems to be the lack of fuel. And here's part of the reason. Public transportation is still a disaster, so folks need to drive. There's no electricity, so you got to use a generator. Lots of gas stations are empty or have no power. Damaged distribution centers and refineries are offline. And ports are closed, so the tankers can't deliver any new fuel. So what you get, wow, look at this line. Speeding it up now, northern New Jersey, outside New York City. It just goes on and on and on. Fortunately, things should get better at some point, but try telling that to somebody who runs out of gas while waiting in line to fill up. And here you have a picture of a guy in New Jersey who had to siphon what little gas he had out of his car so he could fill his generator. Keep in mind, Sandy affects people across 17 states. Along the coast, there is destruction on a scale that this region has never before witnessed. 4.5 million homes are still without power, as Fox reports tonight. And now the latest estimate for the storm's economic damage, a staggering $50 billion. That would make Sandy the second costliest storm in U.S. history, trailing only Katrina. Earlier today, the New York governor, Andrew Cuomo, said the federal government is helping to feed hundreds of thousands of victims who in many cases no longer have homes.
FEMA worked with our National Guard. I'm going to join them now in bringing 1 million meals to New York.
A warm meal in a region where it is now November and temperatures are dropping fast. The Fox Reports chief correspondent Jonathan Hunt is live with us in New York City tonight from a Hess station, it would appear, on the west side. The shortages are ridiculous.
Yeah, Shep, this on the far west side of Midtown Manhattan is one of the very few gas stations that is still open anywhere in the city. You can see the tanker there. That is the third time it has been here today since we've been here for the last 8 hours or so to actually fill up. So people keep coming. And take a look out here at the lines. People have been waiting in line 1.5, 2 hours all day. New York's finest, the NYPD here to keep order because, as you can imagine, in these situations where they're waiting block after block after block of this avenue in New York, tempers do sometimes flare. But Mayor Bloomberg said today that relief is on the way. Listen.
Some of the gas stations aren't open because they don't have electricity, and the pumps need electricity to run. That hopefully in the next couple of days will be accommodated. And once mass transit comes back, you have a lot fewer cars trying to buy gasoline.
And among those we saw filling up here today were some of the New York firefighters who are doing their very best to help the many people in downtown Manhattan who still have no power and need all the help they can get, Shep.
And then there's a commute. New Yorkers are used to brutal commutes, but this is on another level.
Yeah, this has been extraordinary, although we are hearing that the commute out tonight is not as bad as many people had feared. The lines over the George Washington Bridge, we're hearing, for instance, not bad at all tonight. But coming in this morning, it was an entirely different story. Lines across many of the bridges into Manhattan, very, very long indeed. And then we heard tales of people waiting for hours for a bus from Brooklyn into Manhattan. Of course, with so many people not able to get gas out in New Jersey or north of New York in Westchester, more people are using public transport, as the mayor said, and that is putting a huge strain on the mass transit system. It's slowly getting back to normal, and one thing I will say, Shep, is that New Yorkers, for the moment at least, are taking this in a very good spirit. Many of them realizing that being without power in their apartment for a couple of days, having to stand in line online for gas for a couple of hours is nothing to the loss of life that some families have suffered through over the last few days, Shep.
So true. Jonathan Hunt on Manhattan's west side. Jonathan, thank you. Meantime,
well, we see some of the devastation as the storm passed, but this is a story that is still very much developing. The extreme weather is not over yet for many parts of the country as wet snow and high winds spin off the edge of Sandy and create blizzard-like conditions across Virginia and West Virginia, also Pennsylvania. Janice Dean is live at the Fox Weather Center with more for us now. Janice?
And Jenna, if you can believe it, we might have a storm impacting the same region into next week that could just cause more problems as people are trying to clean up. So, of course, we'll keep you up to date on the very latest, but it does look like we're going to have a storm developing. Of course, it's not going to have the same impact as this one, but a possible coastal event that will move into these impacted areas early next week. We will certainly keep you posted. We are still not done with what was Hurricane Sandy. It's now an extratropical low, but it's far-reaching. The cloud canopy stretching as far up as the Arctic Circle, and we're still seeing rotation and tropical moisture streaming into portions of New England. Just incredible that we're still talking about this storm system and the snow that is flying over 2 feet in some areas. So still a lot of wind and rain and snow to talk about throughout the next 24 to 36 hours. Snow totals. Can you believe snow from a tropical system? You've heard of lake effect snow. This is ocean effect snow. So the moisture that's streaming off of the Atlantic is getting into the Appalachians and bringing us almost 3 feet of snow in parts of Maryland and West Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, and we're still talking about this, and people are without power, and we're dealing with very, very cold temperatures. So this is a wide-reaching story, really 24 states affected by this storm system. Wind gusts in excess of 20 to 30 miles per hour still into Wednesday, especially across the Great Lakes. We saw Mike Tobin there in Cleveland, Ohio, just getting blown away. We're seeing waves 20 to 30 feet. So far-reaching, this storm system. Future radar, the low pressure eventually moving into Canada, but we're still seeing the lingering effects well into Thursday and Friday. So we're going to get a little break across the East Coast into the weekend. But again, we're going to be watching a developing storm system that could affect cleanup efforts into early next week. Of course, we'll keep you posted, but that is all they need across the coastal areas, is just another storm to deal with. And the election coming up next week. John, Jenna.
A lot to keep an eye on, Janice. Thank you. Indeed, this hurricane has truly battered the East Coast. It has flooded a lot of coastal towns. That's Ocean City, Maryland. We know that areas like Wildwood and Avalon have also been very hard hit in this storm. We've seen boardwalks and beaches that have been destroyed, plunging millions of people up and down that coast into the dark today. Steve Harrigan is live in Ocean City, Maryland. He is not far from where Sandy hit. How bad is it where you are this morning, Steve? Good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Martha. It's actually worse here on the bay side of Ocean City, Maryland, than it is where we saw that storm coming in. It really peaked with the high winds at about 5 p.m., certainly hurricane gusts. Now, this area of downtown Ocean City was largely closed off. There was a mandatory evacuation here, and it really looks like a ghost town as far as I can see. This St. Louis Avenue is pretty much turned into a river. It's a pretty strong current coming in. You can see that car half underwater behind me. Most of the people are gone, but there's going to be significant flooding, and it looks like it's going to take a long time for this to clear up. There are some towns like Crisfield even in worse shape than this. We're going to try and get over there later today. As far as damages goes, the main pier is been completely chewed up by the 15-foot waves we saw last night, and there were at least 50 rescues carried out overnight by National Guard and rescue workers. 2 fatalities storm-related in Maryland, one from a tree coming down on the house, the other a car skidding out. The governor and officials have been really adamant, telling people stay off the roads, and of course roads like this are going to be impassable for some time to come, Martha.
Yeah, and you have to worry about power lines that are down and be very careful around those as well. You know, Steve, you just walked by a campaign sign behind you a moment ago, and it reminds us that we are just a week away from Election Day, and you can't help but wonder what the impact is going to be in some of these areas as they try to get people sort of back up and moving around in their communities and having any ability to get out there and vote.
It certainly changed the focus completely. Actually, early voting was canceled yesterday and canceled again today, so people really have gone from thinking about the elections just to thinking about getting their first floors dry here in Ocean City, Maryland.
Steve, when you take a look at the damage around you, and obviously, as you point out, they're discouraging people from coming back and trying to get a look at their property. Obviously, it looks as though everybody cleared out of that area that you're in, right?
Right. This is the low area of Ocean City, Maryland, the downtown area. Usually about 7,000 people here during the off-season, and most of those, you know, storm experienced, pretty hardy people, and most of them did get out. A few hundred did stay, but no injuries here, and the National Guard was working throughout the night. The winds really did feel like a hurricane, 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night. We saw signs snapping off, small items of debris really blowing through the air, so it got pretty dicey there last night, and now it looks like, you know, it's just weird to stand in the middle of a road with a pretty good current coming down St. Louis Avenue here in Ocean City.
Boy, you know, it remains to be seen the economic impact of all of this in these areas that have been hard hit already by unemployment and the tough economy. To have to regroup after something like this and rebuild and find the money to do all of those things is going to be a story that we're going to be covering in the coming weeks and months. Steve Harrigan, thank you so much. We'll check back in with you a little bit later.
Megastorm Sandy making landfall near Atlantic City, New Jersey. Reporter Dave Schrottweiser is live in Atlantic City. Dave?
Greta, we have like the pinwheel effect, they call it now. This is the back end of the storm, still blowing through Atlantic City, still heavy winds here, 40 to 50 to 60 mile an hour gusts, excuse me there. We're going to show you a little shot here. Brian, my cameraman, will pan off. This looks like it could be the bay or a river or a creek or whatever. This is the parking lot at Resorts Hotel, which is full of about a foot to 2 feet of water. It's been like this all day long. We have white caps kind of in the parking lot right there. It's been crazy with the flooding down here all evening. All of the roadways north and south and east and west on this barrier island are underwater, about a foot to a foot and a half. We have National Guard troops, police and authorities working their way around in four-wheel drive vehicles, rack trucks, big heavy-duty trucks, front-end loaders carrying firefighters in and out of the city. We had an actual rescue on camera here in Atlantic City around 5:30 tonight. A young man, 3 of his children and his mom stuck in their home. The water came up as the storm hit here around 5 or 5:30. and literally surrounded his home. He had not gotten out. He had not heeded the warnings to get out and evacuate from Atlantic City, and he had to be rescued by a Good Samaritan in a pickup truck who literally drove him out of the flooding. The storm hit here around 6 o'clock tonight. We had high tide at 8 o'clock. The water has come up on both ends from the bay side to the ocean side. We were actually on the boardwalk when the storm came through. We had the eye of the storm for about an hour, totally calm, no rain, no wind, and now it is back. They call this the pinwheel effect, and that's what we're experiencing now, flooding all over the island. The casinos emptied out around 4 o'clock yesterday. Mandatory evacuations. Don't know if it'll reopen tomorrow. The only problem we haven't seen down here tonight is widespread power outages. You can still see many of the casinos lit up and down the boardwalk here. They're boarded up, sandbags all over the place. I'm told there is some water damage in some of the casinos. They'll have to evaluate that overnight before deciding whether to reopen again. Up and down the coast here in South Jersey, along the Jersey Shore, from here to Ocean City, Stone Harbor, Avalon, all the way down into Cape May. Serious flooding, Back Bay areas, the Back Bay area water, and the ocean water right in the center of many of these towns, and massive flooding here. We'll have to spend probably days, if not weeks, cleaning up here, dealing with all the damage. Live in Atlantic City, I'm Dave Stratweiser. Greta, back to you.
Dave, don't go away. I want to ask you, have you heard anything from any colleagues down in Cape May, New Jersey? Because Cape May, New Jersey has all those big homes that are wood along, beautiful historic homes along that beach. Have you heard anything?
We have. In fact, our Jeff Cole from Fox 29 here in Philadelphia has been down there all day at Congress Hall. You may be familiar with that. That's a big hotel right off the beach there. Lots of flooding down there also in the Back Bay area. Some of those big homes along the Bay area, they suffered some damage, I'm sure, from water. The winds have been somewhere between 50 and 80 miles per hour all day long. Got up as high as around 90 around 6 o'clock tonight when the storm set in. Have not seen enough damage or been able to move around to see the damage to those homes because there's a lot of water in the streets. We can't drive the trucks down through those areas. A lot of folks rescued earlier today. I believe here in Atlantic City, they had as many as 500 phone calls placed in this region for people who needed assistance getting out of their homes. If you didn't get out early, the governor of the state of New Jersey, the mayor, and others down here told you to move to higher ground in your house, second and third floor, and just wait it out. They will not be able to get to you until tomorrow morning.
Dave, thank you very much.
We are back, and that superstorm is now packing blizzard conditions across West Virginia. This is just, it's like practically a biblical proportions situation when you look at all the different ways it has manifested itself. So you've got parts of the East Coast that continue to reel from the flood damage, and then you have parts of the state with up to 3 feet of snow in West Virginia. The weather conditions have forced highways to shut down, knocked out power to hundreds of thousands. Earlier in the weeks, people just literally could not believe what they were seeing.
Crazy. You can't go nowhere. Trees in the road, the interstate shut down. Not much you can do.
They got about 4 tractor trailers jackknifed on that mountain, and nobody, 2 of them side by side.
Boy, when you get the snow on top of everything else, it is brutal. And that is where Kelly Wright is right now for us in Elkins, West Virginia. Good morning, Kelly.
Martha, good morning to you. You talked about the man being on the mountain and seeing jackknife tractor trailers. We've been on that mountain, or several of those mountains, coming into Elkins, the seat of Randolph County. And oddly enough, 2 o'clock in the morning, I actually saw snow crews out there working. They've been working around the clock. Governor Tomlin has commended them for the hard work that they've been doing to make sure that the roads can be plowed. Here in Elkins, you can see that the roads have been plowed. We have been all throughout this area. The one fundamental thing is it is still without power. Some 14,000 residents alone in Randolph County, more than 216,000 throughout the state still without power because of Superstorm Sandy bringing in this blizzard. We've been all over the area. We can tell you that it's like a ghost town in some of the areas. No gas stations are open. The hospital is operating on generator power only. They're only seeing emergencies today. Also, all of the gas stations, they're closed as well. We've also been in the upper elevations where we've seen downed trees and power lines. That's causing a big problem. They're going to have to get with that, and it's going to take a while. Back to you.
Boy, Kelly, good to have you there to get that story out. because it's awful and it's cold on top of everything else for all those poor people who have no power in their homes. Kelly, thank you very much. We'll see more of you later.
Absolutely. It is a tough road here in Hoboken. The estimate is that they won't have power here for much of the community for 7 to 10 days. They are pulling together, though, as you mentioned, gathering together. There are several shelters open. There are places to charge your phone. They're calling for donations of non-perishable items, for blankets, for coats. We had a chance to get out in this community and walk around and look at some of the devastation that was caused by this storm surge. Some of the restaurants, some of the low-lying apartment buildings, some of the community residences and just general shops, plumbing apparatus places, the water coming in, broken glass everywhere, the mud, the sewage. You can hear, the ambulances in the background. Clearly still an emergency situation for a lot of people in this city that and long road to recovery. We did have a chance to speak with one of the restaurant owners, Chris Escudero, who owns Legal Beans, and here's a look at how he's doing today.
All this was all neatly organized at one point, and the glass just imploded from the weight. They said around my neighbors who really suffered over there, and we've suffered a lot the last couple of years here. But this one, they just came in, within 15 minutes, it went from no water to about 5 feet of water.
The community leaders have asked people to conserve gas, to not drive around if you've got the gas in your tank because there is a fuel shortage. So they're asking people to conserve what they have and to not waste things and not to go out and get it if you don't need it. That's a really serious issue here. They want to make sure that the first responders and the people that need to be available in an emergency have it. That's really the layout on the ground right now. The power still to be out for 7 to 10 days. That's going to be something very frustrating for a lot of people in this close-knit community. Back to you, Jenna.
As you rightly point out, not just a today's story, but a story for the weeks and really months to come. Molly, thank you.
And this half hour with a Fox News extreme weather alert after that monster storm Sandy.
Yeah, the trail of ruin that she's left behind all up and down the East Coast is really unimaginable. It could take days or even weeks before we know the full extent of Sandy's effects.
I just spent whatever kind of money I had fixing it up, and now I have nowhere to go. And just the clothes on my back. That's what I have.
Just one example of total despair this morning. New pictures emerging of the damage and the historic and deadly storm. We have live team coverage as folks around the country try to pick up the pieces. Well, the East Coast left looking like a war zone. Down power lines, a battered road is what Sandy has left in its wake in Seaside Heights, New Jersey, just as one example.
All of this devastation, a harsh reality for the millions hit by this monster storm. Anna Koyman has more for us. Anna?
Good morning, ladies, and good morning to everyone at home. It destroyed landmarks, amusement parks, pushed homes off their foundations, and toppled trees. The damage from Sandy, unthinkable. The hurricane leaving at least 50 people dead, many of its victims killed by falling trees. This morning, more than 8 million people are in the dark, and they aren't expected to get the lights back on for days. New York City is at a standstill. Check out this amazing video. Subways once packed with millions of commuters are completely flooded out. But it was the Jersey Shore that really got the brunt of it. Seaside Heights, one of the hardest hit cities. Residents who had stayed behind had to get rescued from their homes. The iconic Boardwalk, now just a pile of rubble in the sand.
It won't be the same. It'll be different. Because many of the iconic things that made it what it was are now gone and washed into the ocean.
I was terrified. I'll tell you, I'm usually not afraid of storms, but this one really did scare me. And I told my mom this is to be the last one they ride out.
And it is estimated all the damage done by Sandy could top more than $20 billion, ladies.
Goodness. Anna, thank you so much. And you've been outside reporting.
To tell you the big story this morning is this fire in Queens, New York. It's a section called Far Rockaway over by the Atlantic Ocean. This was in that evacuation zone. Some 50 homes caught fire. That fire started around 11 o'clock last night. A very tragic scene. We understand that some people had to be rescued. Firefighters had difficulty reaching those homes because there was about 3 feet of water in the streets. The NYPD tells us around
around 200 firefighters actually battling this blaze, fanned by these gusty winds that are still blowing. You might remember we got a taste of what happened early yesterday afternoon when a giant crane snapped. The arm of this crane snapped on top of a giant high-rise, 90 stories tall. That crane is still dangling, quite frankly, perilously over the streets of New York City. The other big issue we have is this storm surge that happened. I was out in the storm last night, had a chance to walk knee-deep in these waters. It was just outrageous, the power of these waters. The subway system flooded. Also a hospital, New York University Langone Center. That hospital was flooded, knocked out the backup generator. They had to evacuate some 200 patients to other hospitals around New York City. And of course, the big story is transportation getting around this city. The subway system inundated. They're calling it, the MTA is calling it the worst disaster to hit the subway system here in the city. Very difficult days coming up. Back to you.
All right, Todd Starnes for us here in New York City, telling us about that fire and the crane.
We want to turn out to Sam because, Sam, you had a stunning look at the complete devastation from the air. And in all of your 30 years of experience, have you ever seen anything quite like this?
No, Amy, because I've never seen a storm like this hit an area this populated. And there are still so many stories to be told of this region. Let me just show you one of the pictures that we brought back. This is the Arthur Kill. It's a body of water that kind of leads into New York Harbor, that leads into the Atlantic. And you might fly over this and miss this point until you look right here. And we've covered so many oil slicks, so many fuel oil spills. That is a giant, that's just the size of a giant tanker right beside it. That's the size. And this oil spill, this fuel oil spill goes all the way out into New York Harbor. No one has started talking about that problem yet. And all the pictures on the ground are so horrible. But when you get in the air, there's no words.
From the air, complete devastation doesn't even describe it.
I can't believe this.
As the water recedes, the scope of the damage is just now coming into focus.
Wow. New York Harbor. That is Staten Island. Look at all those boats. This is a perfect example of storm surge damage inside New York Harbor. This is Staten Island, but it's not the open coast. Look at that. Look at these boats of all sizes. Small boats, big boats, tossed up against that building. That was some powerful surge.
Just south of Manhattan, this is Great Kills Harbor, New York.
Every pier is washed off. Every boat is tossed in. Whoa! Look how far that goes.
East across New York Harbor, this is the tip of Coney Island.
Look at the debris. When you see it, house after house after house, that's just unbelievable. That is the fire zone of Breezy Point. Now, that's more than 100 houses in that community.
Before and now.
When your house survives a storm like that, you just don't think you're going to lose it to fire right after the storm.
And just look at Hoboken, New Jersey from above. 25% of the city is still underwater.
The National Guard went in to set up some supply stations right in front of City Hall. You can actually see the supplies they've set up. Now that's Belmar, New Jersey, and that's where the boardwalk should be. Take a look at where it is now.
Town after town annihilated in the wake of Superstorm Sandy.
And we're not done with the wind yet. While everyone's cleaning up, remember Sandy is still way up here in Canada. But all of these winds, when you see these different colored arrows, the way they're going, these winds right across the New York City area, when we put this model in effect, are 20 to 30 mile per hour winds that'll take us all the way through today. And that's all the way from the Great Lakes, still well back into New England, putting up with these strong gusty winds again today.
Sam, right now, he's downtown right by the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. And Sam, that tunnel's still underwater.
Yeah, George, unbelievable. 36 hours after this storm Sandy made landfall, and each one of those images is still jaw-dropping. Now, this is the underpass that goes to the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. It is the main gateway for 2 million Brooklyn residents to get into New York, and normally there would be thousands of cars trying to get in this morning. And right now it's just home to about 43 million gallons of water. So where is this storm right now? Take a look at the picture and you can see that this storm is making its way from central Pennsylvania into western New York State. So for the next 2 days, we'll still be dealing with this storm. That is 3 days beneath the superstorm that is Sandy.
The enormity of Sandy's damage is clearly seen from the skies. And even for first responders who have seen it all, this is overwhelming.
I've been in the Coast Guard for 38 years. Very sobering today to see some of the damage that we saw, because you realize for every little flooded street you see, there's a lot of people that are unable to do what they want to do, and their livelihood is affected and their families affected.
Look at this whole neighborhood right here. Oh man, that building's gone entirely.
Sandy's fierce winds snapping tree after tree, and when they came down, they took down everything in their path. Power lines where they shouldn't be.
So we got a transformer down?
Yeah, the pole snapped right up top. Wind came across the roof line.
And this fire, blamed on Sandy, blazed out of control in Queens, New York, and took out over 100 homes, decimating a tight-knit beachfront community.
Breezy Place is destroyed, it feels like. It's like the apocalypse.
Nearly 200 firefighters battled the blaze for 10 hours, fighting their way through chest-high water on the flooded streets and rescuing people by boat. Miraculously, in that fire, only 3 people suffered minor injuries. So many rescues, each one vital and heroic. Watch this dramatic air rescue in progress as Helicopter 23, named after the 23 New York City police officers killed on 9/11, plucked 5 adults and a child off these Staten Island rooftops. And the search continues this morning for 2 Staten Island boys, ages 2 and 4, who became separated from their mother after their car was flooded with water during the storm surge.
And it's a brutal cold wind that comes behind this storm system, so it's going to be really uncomfortable for everyone who's trying to do the cleanup. With each one of the communities, there's the question of when's this going to be cleared? When's that going to be ready? And for millions of people, the main driving question this morning is, what about those New York City subways? When are they going to be rolled?
Barry, go up on the board, make sure we're not leaving anybody behind.
Thomas Boyd is not just the police chief of Seaside Heights. This is his hometown.
I'm devastated. This is all my family-owned businesses over here, and school's named after my father.
A badge gets you onto the island to see the iconic Jersey Shore crumbled into pieces. But there are thousands of people who own homes here who won't see this for days. People like Jack Sauer.
We're the only part of the state that can't get to our homes because we live on an island, and you've got a choke point here to keep us from getting to the island.
I don't care about a house. I'd rather care about your life. That's what I care about. Life first.
That confrontation happened on the other side of the bridge. Law enforcement won't let Jack and his neighbors return home until it's safe. Less than 100 people who stuck it out through the storm are still here. It's their right, but
we did not let anybody walk around, because when people are walking around, that means they're up to no good. So I had full complement of patrols on the strip, by the beach, keeping an eye on everybody's property. That's why we had no looting last night.
This is Seaside Heights, the heart and soul of New Jersey, now in shambles. A lot of people spent their childhoods here. A lot of people remember the Scrambler. That's what it looks like now. A lot of people remember the Jetstar roller coaster. Now it's part of the Atlantic Ocean. For the people of New Jersey, the whole region, and the police chief himself, this is personal.
For a small community such as Seaside Heights, to see their whole livelihood crash into the ocean, it's devastating because they need to rebuild our town.
The cavalry is arriving. Planefuls of electrical repair vehicles and volunteers from out of state are working to get the lights back on in the Northeast. But for the millions of people without power, those lights have already been out too long.
There's people that have nothing. They have just the clothes on their backs, and it's
frustrating, I bet, to have to wait.
Very frustrating.
From New York City to New Jersey, desperation is now replacing sadness.
But you need to come here and help us. We need assistance, please.
Crews are trying to salvage mere shells of once thriving communities, but residents locked out of their homes for safety reasons are losing patience.
Why is it unsafe there and nowhere else? Talk to the press. Talk to the rest of the homeowners.
The gas mains. It's the gas mains we're scared of. That's what we got the gas company over trying to shut the gas mains off. I don't care about a house. I'd rather care about your life.
Attempts at normalcy are plagued with complications. On the roads, hours-long traffic jams. And gas lines so long, people are arriving literally on empty.
We've been like, 2.5 hours? Yeah. 2.5 hours.
In New York City, many are questioning the mayor's priorities as the city prepares for its yearly marathon that draws tens of thousands to Manhattan.
We're pulling bodies out of water. You see the disconnect here?
The pain from Sandy still fresh and communities anxious to recover. In Atlantic City, New Jersey, I'm Danielle Lee, NBC News.
The garbage is everywhere, either neatly organized or strewn about on lawns. The shore community of Brigantine, New Jersey was exposed to Sandy's pummeling.
There are still big piles of debris on Brigantine Avenue, which faces the Atlantic. And the people here say it wasn't the wind that was so much the problem, but it was the big water surge that washed most of this material up.
That water reached Lauren Brown's house, where she and her fiance just finished redoing the inside.
This is my garage. All this was all lifted up. All of our couches got soaked. Inside, the washer and dryer's wet. There's water in there. Water came pouring out. And these are all lifted up. And this is all caving in. The fence is all caving in. It's heartbreaking. It really is. Not just for me. I mean, it's all fixable. Everything's fixable. But you just see your family and friends, everybody, this small community. You know everybody. You walk down the street and everybody's just crying, and it's just going to get worse once everybody's allowed back on the island.
Those residents who never left the island have started their cleanup, but many homes still sit empty since police haven't let most back out to the shore communities. One reason, no power, so electricians and caravans of trucks are now working on that. And South Jersey gas workers are checking for leaks. Still, no one is certain when the utilities will all be back on. Schools will reopen, and people here can once again enjoy the water that is one of the biggest reasons they live here. For the Weather Channel in Brigantine, New Jersey, I'm Scott Newell.